Welcome to the Spotlight series. Don't just survive, thrive. Most of us have experienced challenging times, now more than ever. The key is how we choose to respond, whether we merely survive or thrive. My name is Nicola Steele, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. With over 20 years' expertise, I provide insights on how you can transform your career to the next level. However, we are not just our careers. We are spouses, partners, parents, friends, etc., with a variety of needs and wants. In this podcast, I talk to a diverse range of experts from different professions, such as finance, law, psychology, and health, to provide insights on how you can survive and thrive. I don't have all the answers. However, collectively, we can instill hope, clarity, and inspiration. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Georgia Henry. Georgia is a culture strategist and director of Henry Reed. With over 25 years' experience in human resources, culture, organisation design and development, Georgia optimises organisational effectiveness to achieve results and mitigate risks. Georgia, thank you for joining me on episode 7 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you. So, Georgia, tell me a bit more about you and what you do.
Well, as you've said, my background's in human resources and organisation design and development, but my passion is really for people and helping people be able to achieve their best, and as a result of that, organisations being able to improve and develop as well. So one of the great benefits of the work I do is that we improve results for organisations and mitigate risks. But that's actually not why I do what I do. I'm passionate about creating cultures and organisational experiences where people are able to contribute, where there's a focus on continuous improvement and where employees are valued. So that's my passion, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do that through my own business, which I've been running for the last 3 years. And the benefits to organisations is that they get improved results. Very great to be able to do what I do.
Absolutely, and that's the reason I do what I do as well, is my passion for people. At the end of the day, people at the heart of what we're doing. So that's fantastic. And so in terms of the impact on businesses, organisational culture in the wake of the current crisis, what impact have you seen?
It's depended really on the organisation. So I think a crisis like this shines a spotlight on organisation culture and the good and bad of organisation culture. I've seen some organisations that have really strengthened in the wake of this crisis, where all of those good elements, those shared values, the sense of purpose, the ability for employees to contribute has been strengthened, and they've really supported each other and their employees through this process. And I've seen others, organisations that have been completely fractured, and the spotlight has been shone on the inadequacies of the culture and the areas where culture is actually not being supportive and creating a cohesive organisation. Even had one example of early on, it was about a month ago, of a CEO who was making decisions on redundancies and stand downs, who did a video recording and sent that out to all employees, and then told leaders to, okay, now everyone will know in the next 48 hours who's staying, who's going. And I'm like, this is, in times of crisis like this, it's really for the opportunity for leaders to step up. But if the culture doesn't support the implementation of change, then it's more likely to be managed badly than to be managed effectively. So what I've seen, the impact on culture in the wake of this is it's become very obvious where an organisation has strengths in culture and where an organisation has immense opportunities to improve their culture.
Yeah, definitely, and made it much more acute about what's been done really well and been
Absolutely.
really done really badly. And I was gasping when you said about that video example. It sounded like a game show.
Oh, awful. And the impact on employees. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of organisations don't realise, even if they've had to make difficult decisions and standing down employees during this time, how they continue to stay connected and have managed that process will impact their ability to bring people back into the organisation when they need to restart, whether it's those same people or whether they are bringing different people into the organisation. The way that they've managed this situation impacts their reputation. It impacts the engagement of existing employees. And really, when it's done badly, an employee has a choice to go back to that organisation or go somewhere else. I'm betting they'll go somewhere else.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's not just the people that have unfortunately been made redundant or stood down, the people that are holding the fort. And when it becomes normal again, or what the
Yeah.
new normal is, are you really going to want to work with an organisation that's behaved in that kind of way? Wow.
Absolutely, and we're seeing some fantastic examples of as well. But we're seeing extremes at the moment.
So, in terms of organizational effectiveness and improving productivity, engagement, etc.,
Yeah.
how can organizations really optimize those things?
For me, when we look at optimizing organizational effectiveness, it's having an understanding of what are the levers that the business needs to focus on to be able to improve effectiveness, and then identifying the barriers and roadblocks. So what have been the things that are stopping them being effective or improving productivity and having engaged employees in the past? So one of the things for organisational effectiveness that I've developed is a very simple model that helps leaders understand how culture and the framework around strategy, governance and risk and productivity and the environment that's created and engagement, how they're all actually connected. Because if you look at any of those things in isolation, you're going to make decisions that decrease productivity or decrease engagement. So to look at organisational effectiveness, the model I use starts with the foundation of an organisation's identity, which is around purpose, vision and values. So why are we in this business? What is our sense of purpose? Where are we headed? What's our long-term aspirational goal? And what are the things that we value, our core values, to help us get there? So we hear a lot about purpose, vision and values with culture, but they're only one element impacting effectiveness. The next sort of level in the model is a hard framework for action, which is strategy, governance and risk. And this is the space where most executives like to play and most comfortable playing, because it's something a bit more black and white, and a bit more able to be managed and planned. And it's really essential that strategy, governance and risk keeps at its heart that purpose, vision and values. And then when we take that to the next level, it's around looking at the impact of leadership and the environment that's created. And leaders have a significant impact on work environment, and that impacts productivity, accountability and alignment and engagement from employees. So all of those things sort of fit together. And there are a lot of extra elements in there. So it's looking at the organisation's structure. It's looking at the capability and capacity of organisations. So there's a lot of elements that have to be considered when we look at organisational effectiveness. The first thing I would suggest for organisations to do is really be able to assess their performance, where they are in all of those things, to know what levers to pull on and what you need to improve. And the way that we do that at Henry Reid is we look for evidence. So we do what we call a culture audit, which taps into all of those different areas and the connection between them, so we can see where the gaps are, we can see where those roadblocks and challenges are, and we have evidence to support it, so that we have the evidence then to make change that's actually going to be impactful, that's going to focus resources in the right way, provide a return on investment, and get measurable results in improving productivity, which is really what we're looking for, which is what I'm passionate about. But the benefits to the organisation then is that there are those improved financial and non-financial results, and we mitigate risk, because most risk comes from within an organisation, from the people who are making decisions and acting on your behalf, and by actually creating an effective and optimised organisation, we mitigate risk as well. So they're the great outcomes, but I love doing it. As I said before, I'm passionate about working with people and helping people contribute the best that they can, and creating environments where employees are valued, and that really is having an effective organisation really, I guess, highlights those competencies as well.
Yeah, so it's coming back again to the heart of the matter, which is the people, the values, the vision, and less so the processes, etc.
Yeah.
And in terms of uncovering those roadblocks, would you do surveys, or how would you go about uncovering those?
So we do in our culture audits a variety of different methods, because we're looking at not only behaviours and attitudes, we're looking at that framework of strategy, governance and risk. So we use a variety of things. We do surveys. We survey from different levels of the organisation, from a board level to an executive level, leaders and employees. This survey gives us a lot of data that then we validate through focus groups and key person interviews, so we can dig a little deeper and really uncover those unwritten ground rules, the roadblocks and challenges that are being faced, that have been identified fairly broadly through a survey, but need to have that we need to dig a little deeper on. We also do a document review, and that's where we examine the connection between organisation structure, strategy and policies, to look at what does this framework look like, because it's quite easy to say, look, we've got an innovative culture, or we've creating this environment where we value contribution, and yet when we look at the foundations and the frameworks of policies which provide those boundaries, or the hierarchy, the structure, and we might find that in this so-called innovative culture, there's a 10-step approval process to order a packet of biscuits. You know that that's in conflict. So we look for those areas that are in conflict with each other, and because that shows clearly a barrier or a roadblock that we can work through. So we do the surveys, we do the focus groups and interviews, document review, and we conduct a risk assessment on current culture, which really provides the business case for making change, and it highlights where the significant risk is from the current culture, and that then goes in a report and recommendations that really help as a starting point for making some significant change.
And out of curiosity, so when you're doing the focus groups and the surveys, documents, etc., how comfortable do both leaders and employees feel telling what they actually really feel, rather than just lip service at this current moment in time because of the crisis and the possibility of losing their jobs?
Yeah, look, it's been an interesting one, and for us, we find generally people are very open to talk to us because we're independent. And throughout my career in human resources, I've found now that I'm working independently and outside an organisation, people generally, I have more honest and robust conversations, because they're not concerned so much about the politics of speaking to someone internally, or the repercussions, and they're open to share. And I've had better discussions with CEOs, providing that external perspective as well. It's interesting though, in surveys and interviews where it's more the one-on-one contribution, we get very open and honest answers, and we have to be really careful about our focus groups. Generally, we don't want to have any bias in a focus group or influence who's there, but we want people to be comfortable speaking. And so, for example, we would do a focus group with like-minded employees or similar group of employees, rather than having a mix of employees and leaders, because employees may not be willing to share as openly. So we structure the way we gather that information to make sure people do feel comfortable, and the results are consolidated, so people aren't called out for the information that they provide to us.
And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So for the last few months, we've been told that we've got to work from home. How would you recommend that companies best manage working from home rules?
Look, I think there's a couple of things to consider. It's whether you're working from home and you're still operating business as usual, or you've got people working from home who can't do their normal role. So there's two different things that we've got. One of the advice that, this is another bad example of what I heard early on in the piece, is that a leader of a particular company had set up a 8-hour Zoom meeting for his team so he could watch what they were doing, have the people on there, so he could make sure people were doing the work for the time that they were meant to be at work. Now, that doesn't work. One of the things that working with different organisations that I've been making sure are happening is that leaders need to understand that people working from home have different set of challenges and priorities, whether it's homeschooling kids or interruptions or a different schedule. And the work needs to be outcomes focused and not so prescription. So I think the leaders who have managed a little bit with the whole working from home might be those who like to have a little bit more control or micromanaging, rather than those who are allowing their teams and trusting their teams to move on with things. So one of the pieces of advice I've got for organisations that are still doing business as usual is to really be there to support, be outcomes focused, not worry so much about the hours of the day that work is being done, to be empathetic and understanding that people have got different stresses upon them right now with homeschooling and different priorities, and that the work will get done, but it will not get done in the way that it has normally been done. Communication and connection is really essential during this time, but leaders need to understand how they are managing that communication and how they're connecting. And for those organisations that aren't actually running business as usual, so you might have employees who can't do their normal job. We work with an organisation in the performing arts sector, and they've got a whole lot of employees that can't be doing their normal job because it's around performances. However, there's an opportunity to still keep engaged with those employees, to look at what have been the things that they haven't been able to get on top of in the past because of other priorities. What projects can people be doing? How can they be upskilling? How can they be contributing to business improvement instead of doing their job at home? So there's a lot of opportunity in this environment to be working from home effectively.
Yeah, so trust, communication, and meaningful work, basically, and not have Big Brother watching over you for 8 hours with the Zoom camera.
So no one works effectively when in an office environment where they're being watched for 8 hours. It certainly doesn't work effectively on a Zoom environment or an external environment where you're actually looking into people's homes and their lounge rooms, and there's all those other influences as well. So, yeah, absolutely, being Big Brother in a time like this doesn't work.
Absolutely, and having the kids pottering in and
that's right.
all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's the time for empathy and understanding, and I guess understanding that these things are going to be, there's going to be different interruptions as well during the day.
And it's, again, when we are back to normal, that is not going to reflect well being micromanaged for 8 hours of your working day when we are back in the office, or a mixture of working from home and flexibility. Also, on the subject of Zoom calls or virtual meetings, I've had a few people say to me, it was all quite exciting at first and we're all talking to each other, but people are now finding that employees are feeling burnt out from back-to-back virtual meetings. So what would your advice be with regards to that?
Look, it's something that I've seen a lot of as well, and I've through my executive coaching as well, some of the senior leaders that I coach have said, look, it's getting ridiculous. We're being asked to be on all these meetings, and they're finding it difficult because you spend all day on a Zoom meeting. You still have to do the work, so you still have to actually then spend time working. That's not effective, and it's not fair for families. You're in a home environment. You wouldn't have that expectation in a normal workplace environment. So it's really what I've been coaching people on in that situation is back to some basics on time management skills. And if these are meetings that you would not normally be having or aren't, don't need to be in at this time just because you're in a home office environment, then you should be pushing back on that. Some of the leaders that I've coached recently, we've actually started to say, look, what is the relevance of this meeting and who needs to be involved? As I said before, there needs to be a strong connection and engagement with employees. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to be on a Zoom meeting every day. I've really encouraged people to engage with different ways. I think working remotely, you do need a face-to-face check-in frequently for people to feel connected and not isolated. But you can also be using chat functions on Microsoft Teams or Slack or lots of other platforms. You can be doing short FaceTime messages or calls. So there's a lot of different ways that you can connect and interact. And I think really it comes back to basic time management and prioritization and some pushback on unnecessary Zoom meetings.
Yes. And something that I quite like on Zoom is I've been going to networking events, but sat at home. But you go into different rooms.
Yes.
And I've actually found I've connected with people much better that way than actually physically being in a big room where you've got food and drink and flittering around and never really having a conversation that's of substance, whereas you seem to have more.
You can, and I've found that as well, Nicola. It's so we use the breakout rooms on Zoom for our focus groups and for quite a few of our meetings as well, and it's great. You suddenly go from a larger group to a very small group. You're looking face to face. You've got no distraction. You can have a very meaningful conversation. And I think Zoom, like any other meeting, you need to have an agenda. You need to know what it's there for. But the effectiveness of Zoom meetings is great because you are face to face without distraction, and you can really have some meaningful conversations.
Although when people don't have their image there, so it's just their name. You kind of think it's like somebody coming to a meeting with a paper bag over their head that nobody wants to see them. It's really kind of, I don't think it puts me on edge. It just makes me feel slightly uncomfortable when you can't see somebody's face.
Yeah.
So I keep referring to normal, back to normal, the new normal, etc. But in terms of workplace flexibility, which do we have at the moment? Questionable, but in terms of workplace flexibility in the future, what do you think it's going to be like in the long term?
Well, I'm really hopeful around workplace flexibility. This is something I've a really big believer in the benefits of workplace flexibility and have been advocating this for some years. For me, what I'm hoping this, everyone being isolated, going to shut down, working from home, what I'm hoping this does is breaks down some of the barriers or perceptions of workplace flexibility or working from home. Because there's a lot of people who I've come across in the past who've said it won't work for our business. We need people to be in the office. It's not possible when people can't work part-time hours or varied hours, and it's really limited the opportunities, I think, for organisations to be able to engage the best talent for their business. And so moving forward, I would hope that there's those barriers to opportunities for flexibility have been removed, and that organisations start to think about flexible work as an opportunity for them to engage with the best talent for their business. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a geographic location in a 50-kilometre radius from where their office is, or it doesn't have to be working within certain hours. It opens up a whole lot more opportunity for organisations to reach out and have the best people working for them because of the flexibility arrangements. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for business.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a really, really exciting opportunity. And similarly to you, I've been advocating this for years and years and years, and really can't understand why you have to be stuck in an office 9 to 5 or 8 till 5 or whatever, 5 days a week. It doesn't make sense unless you really have to be there, like in retail or working in factories or in hospitals, etc.
I agree. Yeah.
So you wrote a blog called Choose Innovation, Not Hibernation, which is fabulous, and I shall share that blog on the show notes. But give me some examples that blog's very much about companies innovating their organizational culture. So please could you give me some examples of companies that have really innovated their organizational culture?
Yeah, look, and when I wrote that article, it was, I guess, in my response to sort of earlier on in the government's response to the COVID-19 situation, where the PM said, we want businesses to hibernate, and it just made me crazy. This is not the time for hibernation. We need to actually use any downtime for a continuous improvement and innovation. And innovation to me it's that opportunity to take a breath and to think and to really look at the way forward. And I think coming out of this, business is going to be quite different. And innovation around organisation culture for me is organisations using culture to be the conduit for change, to drive their business forward and to have sustainability for their business moving forward. Because coming out of this pandemic, there are going to be changes in customer and consumer behaviours and expectations in the way that we want to engage with different organisations and businesses and have services delivered. And so it's organisations really thinking through how that they are going to implement the changes. And change only happens or is only delivered through people. So you can change processes, you can change supply chains, you can change a whole lot of things, but the delivery of change only happens through people. And if your culture is actually not being designed to support that, then it's not going to be effective. So when we look at how are companies innovating their culture, it's really about, again, sort of understanding what their culture is now and what it needs to be able to deliver on their strategic objectives and deliver results in the future for sustainability. The culture is unique to every organisation. So when we're talking about innovative cultures, it's about those organisations who have been able to identify what is unique in the way that they do business or the way that they interact, the way that they treat employees, and how can they optimise that to deliver a different result. So for me, it's around looking at the ways that they're getting employees to contribute and collaborate. For me, it's around, I think that there's going to be a lot of change in organisation structures and the way that we do things. And I think that's exciting.
Yes, definitely. And I think as well, give me your opinion on this, that a lot of companies are looking at the moment to do more social good as well.
Yeah.
There seems to be very much a focus on that, which is fabulous. And long may it continue that, again, it's not just lip service and a marketing campaign. So moving forward, and we've been talking about vision, what is your vision for the future of organisational effectiveness?
Well, I think it's my vision for the future is that all companies actually understand what that means and starts to value their employees and the contribution they make and not be so prescriptive about how things need to be done, but focus on outcomes. Because when you focus on an outcome rather than being prescriptive about the way things are done, you get a greater sense of contribution. And I think moving forward in organisations too, I mentioned this before, I'd like to see a change in hierarchies of organisations. I think there's hierarchies can become very political. They can actually stifle the flow of information and communication and ideas. And I think looking at organisational effectiveness in the future, it is really about how do we optimize collaboration and look at the unique skills and talents of people within our business and allow them and enable them to deliver on that and to contribute those and be engaged to want to do it. And how do we ensure that employees in return are fulfilling their own sense of purpose and feeling valued in doing that, because then you get discretionary effort, you get a great deal of benefit for organisations and employees. So I think I've got a lot of optimism for the future of organisational effectiveness, but we need to get all these organisations understanding and leaders understanding what's possible and that it does mean making change within business.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights, Georgia. It's been great hearing all your thoughts and experiences. Is there anything else that you'd like to share at all?
Look, I've for those people who've known me or listened to me speak before, it's an area of my absolute passion, and I think that by focusing on people and culture of organisations rather than just the strategy, governance, and risk, businesses can achieve so much more. And I really am hopeful that employees and all of us, with my focus and love of people, that this is going to be some significant change for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nicola.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for career advice, your next career opportunity, or to grow your tech team, then please call me, Nicola Steele, on 0499 773 546, or go to our website, jjptalent.com.au. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly tech startups, then subscribe to the Spotlight on Software Development YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.